Let us pray. Lord, have mercy upon us. Lord, have mercy upon us. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness has appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and a just government of men, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trust in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands, and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, members.
Confirmation of minutes.
Members, the minutes of the sitting for July 5th have been circulated. Are there any corrections, omissions, amendments required? There are none. The minutes will be confirmed as printed.
Messages from the governor.
There are none.
Announcements by the speaker.
Good morning, members. I'd just like to make a few announcements here, and that, as the members would know, the regional CPA conference is taking place at this time in Trinidad and Tobago, and the delegates from Parliament who are representing us are the Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable MP Lawrence Scott, and Honourable MP... Scott Simmons. Scott Simmons, and Miss Leah Scott. Too many Scotts there. And they'll be absent today, and traveling along with them is the Administrative Assistant, Mrs. Place. Also absent this morning will be MP Weeks, MP Tanae Ferbert, MP Pentland. And I'd like to acknowledge that the Sergeant of Arms is also off the island today, and we have acting for us today, Mr. Ro Ming. Welcome aboard, Mr. Ming. And lastly, I'd just like to remind members to make sure you do have access to your parliamentary emails that are on your tablets, because the correspondence, as you know, are being sent there, and we have a couple of members who have indicated they haven't been able to get the information. So please make sure you get access and check your parliamentary emails. Okay. We're ready, Ms. Moore.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Where are we? Messages from the Senate.
There are none.
Papers and other communications to the House.
Members, we have 6 papers of communications this morning. The first 2 are actually in the name of the Premier. Premier, would you like to present your papers?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the House of Assembly the posthumous pardon granted to the Reverend Charles Vinton Monk in accordance with Section 22 of the Constitution.
Thank you. Would you like to do your second paper?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermudian Charter of the Rights and Responsibility of the Elderly and Adults in Need of Long-Term Care and Assistance.
Thank you, Premier. The second The third paper this morning is in the name of the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honourable House of Assembly the Money Service Business Order 2019 proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 11(7) of the Money Service Business Act 2016.
Thank you. The next paper this morning is in the name of the Honourable Minister Fogo. Minister, would you like to put your paper?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda Sport Anti-Doping Authority's 2019 Annual Report and March 31st, 2019 audited financial statements.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
The
Mr.
next is in the name, second is in your name as well. Would you like to continue?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of this Honorable House of Assembly the National Training Board Annual Report for 2017-18 and 2018-19. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The next paper this morning is in the name of the Honourable Minister for Cabinet Office. Minister, would you like to put your paper?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly 2018 Human Rights Commission Annual Report.
Thank you.
Petitions,
There are none.
statements by ministers.
Statements by minister. This morning we have some 9 statements this morning. The first statement this morning is in the name of the Premier. Premier, would you like to put your statement?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, just over a year ago, I advised this Honorable House that I had invited the Governor to, pursuant to Section 22(1) of the Bermuda Constitution, to consult the Advisory Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy with a view to granting a full and free posthumous pardon to the Reverend Charles Vinton Monk. Mr. Speaker, since that time, I have regularly raised this matter with the Governor, and he has indicated that the case has been subject of extensive research and review. Mr. Speaker, the Governor confirmed that he had delved into as many aspects of the case as records from 1903 would allow. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will recall that it was the late Ira Phillip whose definitive work on Reverend Monk provided the best account of the circumstances of the event that led to his trial and conviction. Monk's story was renewed in earnest by the clarion call of the pastor of the St. Paul AME Church, the Reverend Nicholas Tweed, with the support of AME churches of Bermuda. This government determined to seek the redress a pardon could bring. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that there is an inextricable link between the AME Church and the pursuit of social justice. In this year, when we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the theater boycott, it must be remembered that the movement that led to the desegregation of public places in Bermuda came out of the AME Church. Mr. Speaker, under papers and communications to the House, I have tabled for the records of this legislature the writ by which the Governor has granted the posthumous pardon to Reverend Monk. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Governor for his thoughtful and thoroughly researched consideration of this government's requests. I saw the working file on the case, and it was considerable. This is no flight of fancy, but a decision made on the strength of the facts presented, and one that finally does justice after 116 years. Mr. Speaker, I must also recognize the leadership of Reverend Nicholas Tweed on this issue. Sunday after Sunday, he challenges a congregation swelled by radio and internet listeners to look beyond the walls of the church to see what is possible through commitment to a common purpose and an honest discourse about who we are and what we can become. Mr. Speaker, it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said, Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but it comes through continuous struggle. Mr. Speaker, it is through that lens that I view this historic event and this historic pardon. The pursuit of justice demonstrates who we are as this island's government, and we will continue to seek to redress injustice wherever it occurs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. I believe you have a second statement.
Mr. Speaker, I do.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the importance of aging well and ensuring a truly golden years for senior citizens is a priority for this government. In our 2017 general election platform, the Progressive Labor Party undertook to, and I quote, review the laws to reflect international best practices to enact a charter of rights and responsibilities for seniors, end quote. Our goal is to recognize and respect the rights of people who became more dependent on others due to aging, illness, or disability, and to ensure they lead lives of dignity and independence. Mr. Speaker, under the leadership of the Honorable Member, the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Derek V. Burgess, who is Chairman of the Aging Well Committee, and with the technical input of the Ministry of Health, I am pleased today to have tabled for the information of this Honorable House the Bermudian Charter on the rights and responsibilities of the elderly and adults in need of long-term care and assistance. Mr. Speaker, in short, I am pleased to deliver on the promise that we made. The Charter is designed to be a reference document setting out the fundamental principles and rights that are needed for the well-being of all those who are dependent on others for support and care due to age, illness, or disability. And Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that it's for those persons who are adults who are disabled as well, who may not be seniors. To raise awareness for individuals and the community of people's fundamental rights and responsibilities who have long-term care needs and to foster best practices. And to complement and support other measures which are already implemented or in development. Mr. Speaker, the Charter has been developed based upon international and local standards and has been adapted from the European Charter of Rights and Responsibilities of Older People in Need of Long-Term Care and Assistance to suit Bermuda's needs. Whilst advanced under the auspices of the Aging Well Committee within the Cabinet Office, significant input has been received from the Ministry of Health to ensure that it did complement existing regimes as intended. Mr. Speaker, the Charter includes 10 articles, including right to dignity, physical and mental well-being, freedom and security, right to privacy, including a right to private life, and right to private information and communication, right to high quality and tailored care, right to continued communication, participation in society and cultural activity, and right to palliative care and support, and respect and dignity in dying and in death. Mr. Speaker, this government is taking care of seniors. In addition to this Charter of Rights and Responsibilities, we continue to respect the ability of some senior citizens to continue to work in the workforce. As the order paper will reflect, legislation has now been tabled to increase the mandatory retirement age in the public service from 65 to 68, preserving the ability on certain criteria to work until the age of 70. Working people of whatever age can contribute to the economic activity of a society, and where people can work beyond the traditional age of 65, then they should be able to do so. Mr. Speaker, it is this government that pledged to increase seniors' pensions each year by the rate of inflation. And it is this government that has delivered on this pledge for the past 2 years, ensuring that our seniors' ensuring that our seniors' income keeps pace with inflation. Promise made, promise kept. Mr. Speaker, we also continue to take care of war veterans and their spouses. These men and women were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice in support of their island home, and we thank them for their service. The order to increase war pensions from $800 to $1,000 per month is similarly on the order paper, and I wish to make honorable members aware that this year marks the 75th anniversary of the deployment of the 1st Battalion Caribbean Regiment Bermuda contingent. 3 overarching themes drive the Charter tabled today: dignity, rights, and responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, as a society, we should be judged on how we take care of our most vulnerable, Mr. Speaker, and those are our seniors and those who are disabled. The adoption of these ideals marks an important step in creating greater awareness around a key and growing demographic in our community. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I am pleased to advise honorable members that in addition to Mr. Burgess as chairman of the Aging Well Committee and myself, I was truly honored to invite Ms. Helena Molly Burgess to sign this charter on behalf of Bermuda seniors. As a champion of rights of workers and all people in this country, it is only right that her decades of fearless service are marked in this way. Her signature now bears witness to the realization of another landmark achievement in securing rights for Bermuda's people, and in this case, a very special segment, Mr. Speaker, our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. The next statement this morning on the order paper is in the name of the Honorable Minister Fogo. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased today to have had the honor to submit to this Honorable House the annual report and audited financial statements of the Bermuda Anti-Doping Authority for the year ending 31st March 2019. The International Convention Against Doping in Sport of 2005 came into force in Bermuda in June 2006. This was managed locally by the Bermuda Council for Drug-Free Sport, a charity. The authority, as we know it today, was created by the Anti-Doping in Sport Act 2011. Its function is to facilitate the control and prevention of doping in sport and thereby enable our athletes to compete on the international stage, in addition to providing sample collection services for many international sporting events that put on competitions locally, including the International Triathlon World Series 2018, Junior Cycling Championships, and the Bermuda Marathon, just to name a few, Mr. Speaker. This important work is done through a program of education, doping control procedures, and results management. This includes following the World Anti-Doping Agency standards to establish and implement comprehensive anti-doping rules which must adhere to the Water Code international standards and guidelines, an extensive education program for athletes, athlete support personnel, administrators, participants, and the general public on anti-doping and the promotion of health, fairness, and equity in sport. Detailed protocols for results management, and detailed protocols for therapeutic use exemptions. The authority continues to ensure all athletes are tested under the illicit policy, a domestic program, prior to representing our island, either locally or internationally. Mr. Speaker, the Act also establishes a board of the authority who shall monitor the administrative operations of the authority, ensure that correct protocols are followed in the process of securing samples, ensure that the rights of everyone involved in the doping control procedures are respected, and assist in ensuring that the authority receives and manages funds in a prudent manner. Mr. Speaker, Section 17 of the Act also requires the authority to present to the minister a report of its proceedings for the year, including the audited accounts, and for the minister to lay the same within the House of Assembly, which I did so today, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General has signed off on the financial statements, stating that they present a fair view of the authority. I would like to take this opportunity to highlight a number of items from the report and audited accounts. The authority continues to be fully compliant with the World Anti-Doping Agency requirements. Through their sample collections at the local sporting events and in partnership with other anti-doping organizations from around the world, the authority has been able to ensure the testing requirements of both local and overseas-based Bermudian athletes have been fulfilled. Their educational initiatives continue to be of paramount importance, including providing advice to athletes and coaches on all aspects of the illicit and anti-doping programs. Mr. Speaker, under the performance-enhancing program, some 83 samples were taken for testing during the year, a 73 urine and blood samples. There were 2 adverse analytical findings, both of which related to the Bodybuilding and Fitness Federation's Night of Champions. There were 4 positive results under the illicit drug policy, where the substance in all 4 cases was THC, and that is coming from marijuana. The year saw an extensive compliance audit of the authority initiated by WADA, and the authority were pleased to receive a letter stating they were in compliance from WADA in November. Mr. Speaker, the authority's revenue for the financial year is $658,600, which is mainly made up of a grant of $650,000 from the Department of Youth, Sport, and Recreation. Expenses include some $271,590 for the performance enhancement testing program and $133,407 for the illicit drug screening program. I would like to thank the board under the chairmanship of Mr. Michael Smith and the staff of the agency under the leadership of the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Deborah Hunter, for their dedication and hard work during the year. With that, Mr. Speaker, having laid this, the paper before the Honorable House, the Bermuda Anti-Doping Authority audited financial statements on the operations. I say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Minister, the next statement on the order paper is also in your name. Would you like to continue with that one?
I shall, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead.
Pulling my statement out so I can.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, speaking to the National Board Annual Report for the years 2017-18 and 2018-19, which is in accordance with Section 11(1) of the National Training Board Act 1997, the board shall, within 3 months after the end of each financial year, forward to the minister a report on the activities of the board during that financial year and on the board's policy and program for future years. I am also required by the Act, and did so today, to lay the report to this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the report for 2017-18 is over a year late, and I apologize to this Honorable House for that delay. The report before you has consolidated the 2017-18 outstanding report with the 2018-19 report, making it one, divided between the years. The report highlights the important work carried out by the National Training Board. Mr. Speaker, since the last annual report, some of the significant results recorded by the department are as follows. A development of a strategic national workforce development plan. B, significant progress made with persons obtaining national certification due to training personnel in prior learning and assessment recognition, also called PLAW, in order to assess skilled tradesmen. C, over 200 scholarships have been awarded during the 2-year period. D, an increase in the number of apprenticeships and training programs. 6 interns were sponsored to gain work experience in Canada as part of the Airport Redevelopment Project in April 2017. Since its launch, the Bermuda Job Board has grown exponentially with some 155,335 job applications submitted, 1,524 employers registered, 9,300 candidates registered, and 2,407 reported hires. In 2018, over 1,309 clients registered for career development services, and 114 individuals received funding for the national certification training programs. And the report also includes a sample of profiles showcasing success stories of individuals who received services from the department. Mr. Speaker, I will provide further detail on the significant results achieved from 2017-19 reporting period. The Bermuda National Workforce Development Plan was presented to the House of Assembly and the general public during fiscal year 2018-19. The plan outlines 6 high-level strategic priorities which are critical to building a talent pipeline for Bermuda's workforce, a pipeline for all career levels across industries. The priorities include employer and industry engagement, alignment of the workforce development system, creation of career pathways, youth workforce programs, universal access to education, training, and career services, and government resources and funding. The National Workforce Development Plan prioritizes employer and industry engagement and embraces employers as partners within the workforce development system to gain a better understanding of employers' talent needs. Consequently, the work of the department will be driven by industry. The plan provides for increased strategic interaction between the workforce development system and the business community in order to better understand the required skills, occupational growth, and barriers to Bermudians gaining employment and progressing in their careers. Mr. Speaker, the National Workforce Development Plan recommends a framework for a one-stop career center. The center will serve as the hub for the workforce development system or primary location of service delivery. The one-stop career center will provide comprehensive and coordinated services for adults, youth employers, special populations such as people with disabilities, and for financial assistance clients. During the fiscal year 2018-19, the government advanced initial steps to streamline workforce development services by dissolving the Community Education Development Program. This resulted in the transitioning of staff resources into the Department of Workforce Development effective September 2018. The transition has allowed for better utilization of human and financial resources in the delivery of services to the public. Further, it has reduced duplication of workforce services and has begun to lay the framework for the one-stop career center as recommended. Mr. Speaker, the department has continued to provide professional development training to ensure that Bermudians meet the standards for national certification. During fiscal year 2018-19, a 2-day training course was held through the Canadian Association for Prior Learning Assessment Recognition to train members of the Occupational Advisory Committee and the industry assessment panels. Participants developed a proficiency in methods for assessing individuals based on their informal learning, prior experience, and on-the-job training. This created a pathway for skilled tradesmen to obtain national certification based on their work experience, demonstrating a level of proficiency and work portfolios. Mr. Speaker, as a result of PLA, I am pleased to report that the department has made significant progress in certifying individuals in the 4 designated occupations, which are welding, automotive technology, electrical, and landscape gardening for the fiscal year 2018-19. To date, the total number of persons achieving national certification is 417 compared to 100 for the previous fiscal year. National certification provides a measurable standard for employers to gauge skill sets and has equipped hundreds of Bermudians with credentials attesting to their qualifications. The number of persons sponsored for training during the fiscal year 2018-19 was 114 compared to 100 in 2017-18. The training programs create a career pathway for candidates to obtain industry-recognized certification. These include the Canadian Association for Prior Learning Assessment Recognition, Welding Inspector Training, Construction Association, Bermuda Safety Training, Bermuda Hotel and Lodging Education Association Guest Room Attendant Training, Bermuda College Horticulture for Landscape Gardeners Program, the National Fire Protection Association Electrical Coding Training. During the reporting period, the department provided scholarships and awards based on local workforce needs, particularly in the areas underrepresented by Bermudians. During the period 2018-19, the department awarded funding for 42 students for overseas studies, of which 29 were new recipients and 13 continuing awards. There were 58 students funded locally at the Bermuda College, of which 34 were new recipients and 24 were continuing awards. Additionally, 17 students were funded for general education diploma programs. The total number of students funded for the fiscal period 18-19 was 117, a 23% increase from the 95 recipients reported for the previous fiscal year 17-18. Mr. Speaker, the apprenticeship and training program successfully engaged industry partners in developing opportunity for full-time employment and training for apprentices. The department has been keen to promote employer incentives for formalizing apprenticeship and training program opportunities. Employer incentives and training benefits include payroll tax waiver for employers, subsidized wages and training for employers, paid on-the-job training, work experience, and industry qualification for trainees, and sponsored education and professional development for trainees. A total of 12 companies registered, 47 apprentices during the fiscal year 18-19. The participating companies range in size based on the number of employees they employ and include NRG Limited, the Department of Public Transportation, Pink's Salon, BAC Group of Companies, Christen Limited, Noble Automotive, Efficient Technologies Bermuda, Otis Elevator Bermuda, Bermuda Telephone Company, Belco, Fairmount Southampton, and Bermuda Energy Services Company Limited. Mr. Speaker, the department also formed partnerships with industry for short-term training programs for the fiscal year 18-19. These programs are generally less than 2 years. The department successfully engaged 6 new companies to train Bermudians and obtain experience in the fields of information technology, computer programming, residential and commercial cleaning, heavy equipment operators, and water waste management. The Bermuda Job Board remains a valuable tool to assist individuals with their search for suitable employment. There continues to be considerable activity with the 155,335 job applications submitted since the initial launch in 2013. Upgrades to the job board in 2016 provided the ability for employers to report on their recruitment activity. Since March 2016, there have been 2,407 reported hires through Bermuda Job Board. The hires consisted of 972 in 2016, 753 in 2017, and 682 hires for 2018. Mr. Speaker, a total of 1,499 persons were registered with the Career Development Section as either unemployed or seeking alternative employment. In the previous year, 1,309 persons were registered with the Career Development Section. There was a 15% increase of persons registered from 2017-18 to 2018-19. This increase is attributed to hosting registration drives throughout the community, encouraging registration for unemployed persons. Mr. Speaker, the annual report appropriately showcases a sample of success profiles for persons who utilize the department's services. Samara Wilson matriculated through the department's summer employment program and assisted with coordinating program which provided opportunity for her peers, college university students to gain meaningful experience in their area of study. Samara also received funding to assist in the completion of her studies. She now holds a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in international human resource management. Currently, she is employed with HSBC UK as a customer advocate and complaints officer. She credits the department with equipping her with the administrative, organizational, and project management skills that have helped her successfully navigate her academic and professional journey. Samara had this to say: "My experience at Workforce Development was absolutely life-changing. It taught me valuable lessons on the importance of work ethic, networking, and how to be a team player. I would definitely recommend the department to others." Mr. Speaker, David Vernon Bean also participated in the summer employment program and was awarded funding to complete a Marines operation course in Barbados and the higher national diploma in nautical studies with Warsash Maritime Academy in the United Kingdom. David was named Apprentice of the Year and is now employed with the Department of Marine and Ports as a leading seaman for the Bermuda Ferry Service. He shared his thoughts on the department service. The services, as I quote him, at the Department of Workforce Development are vital. I already had the aptitude to succeed, however, I needed the boost find its words. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Lavita Williams worked with our Career Development Section. And we assisted her with her employment goals and soft skills. That's interviewing techniques, her resume, things like that. When the opportunity arose for her to participate in the room attendant training, sponsored by the training section in collaboration with the Bermuda Hospitality Institute, Fairmont, Southampton, and Hamilton, she was eager. Ms. Williams successfully achieved the certified room attendant credential through the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute and found a new appreciation and passion for creating clean spaces. She developed her new skill and passion into her own business, and leave it to her, a specialty cleaning company with discounted packages to benefit pensioners with fixed incomes. She is delighted with the path that her career development journey has taken. She shared the following on her experience with the department. They sent me on a housekeeping training course for 2 weeks where I excelled and became certified. It really boosted my confidence, and this encouraged me to start my own cleaning business. She applauded us for utilizing the sponsored She is applauded for utilizing the sponsored training and career development services to blossom as an entrepreneur and create a successful small business. She is also employed in another cleaning business to supplement what she does on her own, Mr. Speaker, as well. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the National Training Board, the Department of Workforce Development, and industry partners who work so closely with this government to ensure that training and development programs are successful. Their combined efforts will ensure that Bermudians gain success to opportunities and will excel with Bermuda's workforce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next minister on the order this morning with a statement is that of the Minister of Works. Minister, would you like to present your statement?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Morning.
The Department of Land Valuation is mandated under the Land Valuation and Tax Act 1967 to maintain an up-to-date, fair, and equitable valuation list of all properties on the island for land taxation purposes, including the 5-yearly revaluation of all properties for the people of Bermuda. Additionally, the department provides government and its agencies accurate and timely valuation advice and technical expertise of the highest professional standard. Mr. Speaker, the department is one of the smallest in government with a current staff of 8. Correspondingly, the department has one of the smallest budgets within government of $1 million while generating revenue of just over $85 million, or 7.6% of government's estimated revenue. The department is often credited as being one of the first government departments to reform administrative processes in order to realize a paperless office. This is due to the department's bespoke and purpose-built IT system, MAGGI, which stands for Mass Appraisal Geographic Information System. Mr. Speaker, this database is an invaluable tool to the land valuation team, and its integrated case management and geographical information system has not only improved management controls and efficiencies in work processes, but has also made it possible for the department to become a paperless office when the system first went live on the 31st of March 2008. A lengthy process to scan decades of files, maps, and documents that concluded in November 2017 when the office went completely paperless. As a result, the department no longer maintains a physical filing system, as every piece of correspondence, letters, spreadsheets, emails, reports, etc., all digital survey drawings, photos, are scanned and saved to the database. The log feature allows the department to scan and attach documents directly to a case or assessment number. Mr. Speaker, this feature not only applies to paper documents, but also extends to documenting pertinent verbal discussions from phone calls, meetings, and counter-inquiries into the database. This has proven extremely beneficial in relation to follow-up inquiries by taxpayers about a property and/or a case. When considering the litigious environment these days, a documented record of a discourse is an added advantage. Any potential legal actions are not reliant upon an undocumented, vague recollection of a past conversation. Those conversations documented in MAGGI have been frequently utilized by the department in cases both before the Land Valuation Appeal Tribunal and the Office of the Ombudsman. Consequently, the department's numerous filing cabinets have all been removed and redistributed to other government departments as they are no longer required by land valuation. Mr. Speaker, the department has reaped many benefits with ongoing paperless, with the primary ones being more efficient ways of working, as scanned files, letters, emails, photos, property surveys, etc., are easy to locate on the department's IT database and are instantly and simultaneously available to everyone who requires them. This results in increased productivity as valuable time is no longer wasted hunting through filing cabinets for hard copy paper files. Improved customer service and satisfaction due to the increased accessibility of records resulting in faster and more accurate response time to customer inquiries. The need to physically locate paper hard copies from numerous filing cabinets in order to assist someone with their query has been eradicated. All pertinent information is now just a click away. Enhanced data security, as the department's database is backed up regularly and automatically by IDT. There is also zero risk of losing paper files due to a fire, as there are no paper files. More efficient use of existing office space, as bulky filing cabinets are no longer required. By going paperless, the department has actually recouped 10% of its office floor space. This regained space now houses a workstation for the department's bursary student. Cost savings as the volume of paper utilized by the department has decreased, as documents are only printed if a paper hard copy is absolutely necessary. Furthermore, the department no longer needs to purchase file folders and other items associated with maintaining a paper filing system. Increased environmental and wellness benefits with the removal of 4 tons of paper, plus heavy filing cabinets, which improves the air quality and reduces floor loading bearing capacities. The 2020 Revaluation Project. Mr. Speaker, as has been aforementioned, the very reason for the department's formation and continued existence is that of maintaining an up-to-date and accurate valuation list as properties are altered on a daily basis as a result of mergers, demolitions, additions, and new builds. Additionally, the Act also mandates a revaluation of all properties on the island for land tax purposes every 5 years. The island-wide revaluation is a significant project for the department and involves the revaluation of over 36,000 units. At the same time, to maintain parity in the valuation list. Property values change over time, and these changes are not uniform across the market. Since the last island-wide revaluation in 2015, the island continues to experience declines in property values in each sector. As some property types and areas have fallen in value more than others, the island-wide revaluation relevels the playing field by reflecting these relative changes in value. This mass appraisal of properties not only ensures that all properties are valued on the same basis and on the same valuation date, but ensures equity and fairness between the assessments in the valuation lists. The Revaluation Project follows 3 basic principles. 1, rental data collection. 2, analysis of the data. And 3, valuation model building and mass appraisal. Mr. Speaker, rent survey forms will be sent out to all taxpayers this fall, and once the rental data is analyzed, the newly compiled 2020 draft valuation list will be published on the 31st of December 2020. All assessed annual rental values contained therein will be based on levels of rental value around July 2019. Taxpayers will then have 6 months from the date of publication in which to lodge an objection to the new assessed ARV, should they choose to exercise this right. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, paper still remains a medium of communication and cannot be readily and instantaneously expunged from the business environment. However, it is government's intent that the 2020 revaluation will be the last time that survey forms are physically issued to the general public. The next revaluation exercise in 2025 will incorporate the online submission of data. This is in keeping with the government's drive for all government services to be digitized within the next 5 years. Within the Ministry of Public Works, Mr. Speaker, departments and our affiliated quangos will use the land valuation example to devise their own plan of action to go paperless. I encourage any member of the public to reach out to the department with any questions. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to commend and thank Mrs. Diane Elliott, the Director, and her team at Land Valuation for their commitment and continued dedication, especially for all their hard work in creating this pioneering paperless office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next statement this morning is in the name of Minister De Silva. But Minister, before I recognize you, I'd just like to acknowledge that in the gallery this morning we have visiting with us the Minister of Economic Affairs and Communications from the Republic of Estonia, Minister Lubi, is it? Welcome. And as a courtesy, Minister, we'll bring you forward into our chamber if you wish. The Sergeant of Arms will bring you forward now. Thank you. Okay, good morning. Good. Nice to meet you. Good. Minister Silva, would you like to put your statement?
Sure would, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the House will be aware that in this year's budget brief for the Ministry of Tourism and Transport, I reported that a major capital expenditure for the Bermuda Airport Authority was the delivery of a new Doppler weather radio system for the island. I am pleased to report the weather radar will be operational next week, having been completed on time and on budget. Under budget. Let's make sure we make that clear. Under budget. Mr. Speaker, I remind the House that the Airport Authority was formed in March 2017 to oversee the performance of Skyport and to directly manage air navigational services, including the Bermuda Weather Service. Shortly after being formed, the Authority team assessed its mission-critical assets, revealing the need to replace the existing weather radar system, which had reached the end of its useful life and was experiencing reliability issues. Mr. Speaker, the project to replace and upgrade the complex weather radar system commenced in April 2018 and has taken approximately 15 months at a cost of $2.01 million versus the budgeted capital cost of $2.04 million. The various system components were manufactured by German company Leonardo ES and installed at the Coopers Island site with the assistance of local maintenance technicians. Bermudian technicians and weather service staff also received training in the use and maintenance of the advanced system technology. Together with a planned life cycle maintenance program, this training will help ensure an expected 95% system reliability over the life of the system. Mr. Speaker, I wish to acknowledge the authority's board, management, and staff for their effective management of this major capital project and the delivery of Bermuda's new weather radar system in the time for the peak of the 2019 storm season. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of National Security. Minister would like to put your statement at this time.
If it pleases you, Mr. Speaker.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to provide this Honorable House with a further update on exercise trade winds. Honorable members will recall that exercise trade winds, organized by the U.S. Southern Command of the United States Military, was a joint international disaster relief exercise in the Caribbean. 22 countries represented were Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Bermuda, Canada, Colombia, Dominica, the Dominican Republic, France, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, Mexico, the Netherlands, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The exercise was designed to build international regional cooperation in complex multinational security operations, as well as humanitarian assistance and disaster response. Mr. Speaker, Trade Winds Phase 1 was a security-based exercise that took place in the Dominican Republic. Phase 2, which was subject of my update today, was focused on humanitarian assistance and disaster recovery and took place on the island of St. Vincent. Mr. Speaker, the Royal Bermuda Regiment deployed about 120 soldiers from B Company for the exercise. The Royal Bermuda Regiments from the Logistics Company installed a high-intensity security lights and at a free public clinic. The clinic had been repeatedly targeted by thieves who stole computers and drugs. Our soldiers cut down the trees that hid the clinic from the nearby road, installed barbed wire fencing, and repainted the building inside and out. The St. Vincent Minister of Health, Luke Brown, thanked the soldiers for their community assistance and outreach. Mr. Speaker, the soldiers assisted the country's forestry department by cutting back trees that overhung an above-ground power cable on La Croix Road in the Mesopotamia area of the country. The Royal Bermuda Regiment donated 30 sets of public order kit, including shields and protective gear, to the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines Police. Mr. Speaker, this exercise provided valuable training opportunity for the Royal Bermuda Regiments. Our soldiers had the opportunity to work with the Caribbean Task Force and in the headquarters, allowing for the command and control element of the disaster response to be developed. This is essential to our on-island response and operations. The soldiers from B Company worked and formed a subunit of the CTF exercise and their ability to work in tandem with other agencies. This is relevant when Bermuda works along the Bermuda Police Service and other uniformed services. Mr. Speaker, the scope of exercise Trade Winds meant that the Royal Bermuda Regiment worked alongside partner countries and had the opportunity to learn and to form its ability to perform well in an international context. Senior military officers from Canada, the United States, and even Colombia spoke highly of our competency and the professionalism that our soldiers displayed in St. Vincent. The Royal Bermuda Regiment Second in Command, Major Ben Beasley, said, "The Royal Bermudian has far exceeded his expectations, and they have risen to a level that they perhaps didn't believe they could achieve. Trade Winds not only confirms our capabilities, it has expanded them and demonstrated our regional partners our high level of competency." Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to join the Royal Bermuda Regiment personnel in St. Vincent. I, along with the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of National Security, Mr. Colin Anderson. During the tour, we visited the soldiers at base camp and engaged with other regional leaders from various militaries and law enforcement agencies throughout the Caribbean. Our tour of the St. Vincent Coast Guard facilities was a particular highlight. Whilst at the Coast Guard facilities, we were able to gather information that will be helpful as our ministry develops our national security Coast Guard. Mr. Speaker, to conclude the trip, we attended the closing ceremonies for exercise Trade Winds. The Royal Bermuda Regiment's presence and conduct in St. Vincent earned high praise from the acting Prime Minister, Sir Louis Straker, who said at the closing ceremony, honorable mention must be made to the government of Bermuda and to the Royal Bermuda Regiment. Mr. Speaker, the men and women of the Bermuda Regiment represent the best of Bermuda. I was pleased to see them standing as equals among soldiers from largest jurisdictions. I am confident that exercise Trade Winds was not only provided the Royal Bermuda Regiment with valuable security and disaster relief skills, but it also showed the soldiers that the time that they volunteer with the Royal Bermuda Regiment makes a valuable difference abroad and especially at home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, the next statement I also believe is in your name. Would you like to present that one?
If it pleases you, Mr. Speaker.
Do so.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to provide this Honourable House with an update on the important work of the Ministry of National Security's Gang Violence Reduction Team and the team initiatives that will run throughout this summer. Mr. Speaker, honourable members will recall that the Gang Violence Reduction Team has been charged with the strategic development of programs and intervention programs that target our at-risk population. The programs include the Primary Prevention Initiative along with outreach work in the middle and high school levels, a summer work placement program, a redemption farm, a restorative justice program, a support summer mission trip, and continued outreach and prevention in the community. Mr. Speaker, at the commencement of the school summer holidays, the Gang Violence Reduction Team began a new summer work placement and mentoring initiative. The Summer Work Placement and Mentoring Initiative is a job placement program that is selected and employ 15 targeted at-risk young people. These young people have been chosen from the Gang Violence Reduction Team's high school intervention programs, case management services, or targeted students in alternative education programs. Mr. Speaker, the program provides the 15 students with a 6-week paid work experience with local companies. The students are provided with mentoring support to ensure their success in the workplace. The program was created to address the void in the professional development opportunities for young people who have participated in antisocial behavior and who have subsequently been labeled as troubled teens. The on-the-job working experience, along with the mentorship and coaching, is intended to offer a satisfying and meaningful work experience whilst building the skills and knowledge needed to transition into sustainable long-term employment. Mr. Speaker, the Gang Violence Reduction Team believes that the young people are seeking positive attention, approval, and guidance from caring adults. By positively engaging our young people throughout the summer, mentors and employers can help change the young person's perception of what is possible if they change the trajectory of their lives. Mr. Speaker, the Summer Work Placement and Mentoring Initiative has 4 program goals. The first is to provide the youth with satisfying, meaningful, structured work placement and training experience with coaching, mentoring, and support. Secondly, the program seeks to increase the youth's understanding of how their personal beliefs, especially attitudes towards authority, may create problems in the workplace. The third, the program will strive to improve interpersonal skills such as anger management, expressing concerns, communication skills, emotional intelligence, and problem solving to improve work readiness. The final goal is to build positive and meaningful relationships with the business community, which encourages the business community to hire at-risk young people outside of the structured program. Mr. Speaker, the program has identified 15 community business partners who provide meaningful work experiences for the young person in each program. Each company has identified a business champion who will be the main internal advocate and mentor for the young person during their 6-week work placement. Each of the students participating in the Work Placement and Mentoring Initiative have successfully partnered in job readiness workshop and student orientation, a parent meeting with the Summer Work Placement and meeting the Mentoring Initiative coordinators, interviews with identified business partners, and job training on the site with the various work placements. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that 13 of the 15 people have successfully completed the first 2 weeks of the program. From the weekly evaluation, it is clear that these young people are excelling and taking advantage of the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the Gang Violence Reduction Team continues to work with the much anticipated Redemption Farm. There will be 8 trainees who will be participating in the programs. To date, the contracts for all of the young men have been drafted and signed, and the program has commenced in its therapeutic form. The Redemption Farm has been supported by way of volunteer service through the donation of the use of tractors and other machinery. And that machinery has been used and instrumental in clearing the farming land. I am happy to report that the Redemption Farm is fit for purpose and that the fields have been earmarked and for use have been properly plowed and they've been properly cleared. Currently, there are watermelons and cantaloupe and squash and pumpkin vines that have all been planted. These plants are similar species and better known as Curabito pepto, which allow the plants to cross-pollinate when they are in close proximity. Mr. Speaker, while there has been much emphasis placed on the physical farm itself, it must be stated that the concept of Redemption Farm is greater than just the physical milieu. Rather, it is an environment that cultivates the young men's minds, their spirits, and their souls. The farm will provide the tools that would allow these young men to be trained for life skills, business etiquette, and managing marketing, which undoubtedly will prepare them for other successful endeavors in their future. Mr. Speaker, the new initiative of the Gang Violence Reduction Team is the Restorative Justice Program. Restorative justice is an initiative concept widely used in many parts of the world, such as the United States, Canada, the UK, and in Australia. Restorative justice deals with individuals who have committed the crime. The aim is to repair the trauma and the harm caused by the crime. Restorative justice emphasizes accountability, making amends, and if the victim is interested in facilitating meetings between the victims, offenders, and affected persons. When victims and offenders and community members meet to decide how the harm will be repaired, and if done properly, the results can be transformational. To date, there have been 53 restorative justice sessions involving approximately 70 individuals. If the success of the trial program continues, it is likely to be implemented and will need to be undergirded by legislation. The Gang Violence Reduction Team Youth Outreach and Prevention Manager has partnered with the overseas mission this summer to provide an opportunity for 3 at-risk young people involved in our high school initiatives to participate in this year's trip to Malawi, Africa. The overseas mission trip has provided the young people of Bermuda with an opportunity to make a difference in our world by addressing global issues and building homes and schools and shelters in countries where the critical need exists. The traveling group is comprised of 30 locals and is departing on a 7-day trip to build 6 houses in 2 villages in Malawi in Africa. I know this will be an opportunity to shift the mindset and broaden the worldview and change the lives of the young men from our program who will be going to Malawi in Africa. Mr. Speaker, during the summer holiday, the Gangs Violence Reduction Team will continue to provide services to our existing clients and many of the young people that have come on the radar over the summer. The summer break will provide the Youth Outreach Prevention Manager with the opportunity to evaluate the primary school prevention program initiative pilot in both the intervention high school programs. Any necessary strategic changes to the curriculum and overall structure will be made to ensure we are providing the best service to our young people. These programs will be relaunched within the upcoming school year. The Gang Violence Reduction Team will continue to provide oversight and support to the Gang Resistance Education Program, GREAT, and incident management support, case management services, street-level outreach, the Redemption Farm, and the Restorative Justice Program. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Gang Violence Reduction Team led by Pastor Leroy Bean for the initiatives that they have implemented. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. There's a final statement, I believe, in your name this morning. Would you like to do that one now as well?
If it pleases you, Mr. Speaker.
Do so.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to provide this honorable House with some facts that inform the government's decision with reference to the recent sale of the Marine police vessel, the Guardian. Honorable members will be aware that the boat was recently sold for $69,000. The boat was purchased in 2006 as a new marine vessel for the Bermuda Police Service. The boat was bought for $1.6 million from Australia. Mr. Speaker, it is important that I note from the outset that the operational responsibility for the Bermuda Police Service is a remit of His Excellency the Governor. However, after careful analysis, it is clear that the police hierarchy did not conduct the appropriate cost, benefit, and operational analysis prior to purchasing the Guardian 13 years ago. During the past 13 years, the vessel has been deployed on a limited number of occasions. It was never fit for its intended purpose as a marine patrol vessel. The operational use of the Guardian required 6 officers and the fuel cost of approximately $1,000 per daily deployment. The mooring costs were approximately $24,000 per year. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the vessel was assessed and it was determined that the value had decreased to between $300,000 and $350,000 under normal market conditions. The BPS was advised that it will cost up to $100,000 to make the boat seaworthy. Without the $100,000 in the repair, the resale value would not be likely to be much more than $50,000. Simply put, the Bermuda Police Service could not afford to maintain the boat any longer. The Bermuda Regiment was approached by the Bermuda Police Service to determine if the vessel could be incorporated in the Bermuda Regiment fleet, as the later Coast Guard will soon be unfurled. The Royal Bermuda Regiment declined the offer, as acquiring the vessel presented many challenges. The current maintenance for the Bermuda Regiment boats in the current budget year is approximately $10,000. The annual maintenance cost for the Guardian is much higher, without accounting for the $24,000 annually for mooring fees. The Royal Bermuda Regiment currently perform all maintenance on its current fleet. Specialist training and training tools would be needed for the Caterpillar C-12 motors on the Guardian, and this would require a significant financial outlay of thousands of dollars. Mr. Speaker, if the Royal Bermuda Regiment took possession of the Guardian, based upon the Royal Bermuda Regiment's forecast of events and training days, the vessel would only be operated 6 or 7 times a year for training purposes. This was not practical and does not show value for money for the taxpayers. Additionally, the vessel was not designed to be operated close to shore. The proposed operating area for the Royal Bermuda Regiment Coast Guards is inshore and up to 12 nautical miles. In short, the Guardian was not fit for purpose within the current boat troop of the Bermuda Regiment and the current needs projected for the Bermuda Regiment Coast Guard. Also, the cost is too high and does not fall within this year's Royal Bermuda Regiment's operating budget. Mr. Speaker, neither the Royal Bermuda Regiment or the Bermuda Police Service or the Royal Bermuda Regiment have the financial capacity or use for this vessel with the current plans. A submission was made for sale under the Bermuda government tendering regulations. Rather than to continue to pour good money into a bad investment, the decision was made to advertise the Guardian for sale. Bids were invited into the Royal Gazette, and on the 11th and 13th of December, 2018. Following the tendering process, the 2 offers were received. One offer was for $42,000, and the other offer was for $69,000. Mr. Speaker, the Accountant General raised no issue with the fact that only 2 bids were received. As you know, the Accountant General is the ultimate accounting officer for the BPS. The decision on which to offer and accept the decision on which to offer and accept was made by the Commissioner of Police. The sale was agreed, and the highest bid of $69,000, in line with the requirement for disposal for capital assets, was accepted under financial instructions. Mr. Speaker, the sale of the Guardian was a sound financial decision when considering the cost of the mooring of $24,000 a year, the exorbitant fuel cost, the ongoing maintenance, the additional $100,000 that it would have taken to be spent to make the boat seaworthy. This was an expensive lesson learned by the Bermuda Police Service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Members, you'll note that on your order paper, that concluded the statements that were there, but I'm seeking the indulgence of the House, and that the Minister of Finance has approached me this morning in reference to a statement that he would like to do in reference to a matter that is pretty urgent and important that has come about and wasn't on the order paper, but we're going to, with the indulgence of the House, allow him to put that statement this morning, and it's being distributed now as he prepares to present the statement. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, successive governments have confronted the challenge of hotel development in Bermuda. In the past 2 decades, words like stack hotel, fractionals.
Is your mic on, ma'am?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Stack hotels, fractionals, condo hotel, and boutique hotel have all been employed in a national dialogue aimed at producing a fresh hotel accommodation product to assist in stemming the decline of our tourism fortunes. Mr. Speaker, developments have met with mixed results. Historic properties that were renovated have still been unable to achieve workable profit margins. New properties that pursued a mix of traditional hotel rooms and freehold ownership have found construction costs discouraging and units slow to sell. Sites zoned for tourism development have lain vacant in the wake of the effects of the global economic downturn in 2008 and the concurrent ultra-conservative lending approach of financial institutions around resort and hotel development. It is against that background and with that context in mind, Mr. Speaker, that I feel it necessary to provide this Honorable House and the people of Bermuda with the facts surrounding the former Morgan's Point, now known as Caroline Bay. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will recall that a previously little-known expanse of privately owned land in Warwick called Southlands became a rallying point of environmental objections when 3 Bermudians purchased it and outlined plans to transform that site into a hotel. The artist's rendition of the plan featured an Aztec-styled development sloping to the sea, which would be achieved by diverting the existing South Road to a tunnel. Protesters along the roads famously displayed placards saying, the tunnel starts here, and further along, you're still in the tunnel. The developers' then preferred brand partner was Jumeirah, known for signature hotel properties of immense scale, principally in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, it became very clear, very fast, that the conversion of Southlands to a tourism site on the scale then proposed would not enjoy the support of the people. Bermuda needed hotel development, and this had to be balanced with the competing need to preserve a portion of the natural environment on the South Shore. Having lain vacant since the departure of the U.S. and Canadian forces, Bermuda's baselands represented the last large-scale site for any kind of development. At approximately 180 acres, the land mass was a mix of stunning views, dilapidated buildings, and hidden toxic waste. Any development on the site would require remediation to a standard commensurate with its intended uses. Mr. Speaker, it was largely through the efforts of the former Honourable Member and Premier, the Honourable W. Alexander Scott, CBE, that by an agreement of April 2011, that the land at Southlands was swapped for land at Morgan's Point. That agreement set out the terms and conditions of the swap and was discussed in this Honourable House as part of an act of the legislature to enshrine the permissions and rights over the land to the benefit of the developers. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that in the 2011 agreement, the scope of the proposed development at Morgan's Point included an 80-room boutique hotel with 313 additional residences and a 325-room luxury hotel with 337 additional residences. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, honourable members should note that under Section 2.1.1.6 of the Morgan's Point Exchange Agreement, the developer had the right to sell land, condominium units, and villas in the project to non-Bermudians. However, this clause does not specify undeveloped land. Mr. Speaker, the government of Bermuda assumed the responsibility to remediate the site and did so at considerable expense to the taxpayer. In the wake of that remediation, construction commenced on the site. Mr. Speaker, it is difficult to trace the progress on various units, but there are some buildings on the site today. Mr. Speaker, it seems that as early as January of 2013, both the government and the developers wished to renegotiate the terms of the agreement to take account of fiscal realities. The originally intended scale of the development was already seen as not financially viable, and revisions to the master plan were submitted by the developer, which included the deletion of the proposed golf course. Mr. Speaker, the 2011 Act was repealed and replaced by the Morgan's Point Resort Act 2014, which gave, among other things, in-principle planning permission for much of the work required at the site, as well as subdivision permission and various hotel concessions. By July 2014, the then government announced that the remediation of 2 parcels of land at the site had been completed and would then be handed over to the developers. In spite of privately expressed misgivings about the scale of the project and its financial viability, Phase 1 was announced at that time. Was still said to consist of a boutique hotel, 235 units. In November 2014, Mr. Speaker, reinsurance company Arch Capital Group Limited provided lead financing in support of the first phase of construction on the project with an initial tranche of $5 million. By 2016, Arch had been joined by Axis Capital Holdings Limited and Validus Reinsurance Limited for a total of $25 million in financing in respect of the Morgan's Point development. Mr. Speaker, further to a letter of comfort provided to Morgan's Point Limited, in September 2013, the then Minister of Finance advised this Honorable House in December of 2014 that the Government of Bermuda had provided a guarantee to Arch Reinsurance Limited on behalf of Morgan's Point to provide credit support for the $5 million loan. The then Minister stated, and I quote, "This loan is for the purpose of meeting reasonable expenses incurred by Morgan's Point Limited in connection with the first phase of the project, including expenses related to architecture, design, construction engineering, and professional advice and services. The government has guaranteed the full and prompt payment of the principal and interest on the loan," end quote. Mr. Speaker, it is important for honorable members to note that as at 2014, this was apparently the only financing that had been secured in support of these purposes. In fact, the then Minister of Finance alludes to this later in the same statement to this Honorable House when he said, and I quote, "I am confident that if satisfactory financing is obtained, this development will turn a brownfield site into a stunning resort," end quote. Mr. Speaker, it was in response to questions on the floor of this Honorable House that the people of Bermuda first became aware of the intention of the development at Morgan's Point to be a Ritz-Carlton Reserve branded property. In March 2016, the principals of Morgan's Point announced that they had secured the financing for the first phase of the development through the support of the 3 reinsurance companies to which I referred earlier. One of the developers termed this lending as, and I quote, "a huge shot in the arm for our project," end quote, and he declared the developers, quote, "overjoyed that these icons of industry in Bermuda are so supportive of our vision for the next level of international tourism development for our island," end quote. Mr. Speaker, Morgan's Point became branded as Caroline Bay around April 2016, and at that time, one of the developers indicated that the project was well underway and that with the funding in place, I quote, "with the funding in place and a 5-star global hotel brand secured, the Morgan's Point development is poised to bring a myriad of opportunities for our fellow Bermudians," end quote. By November of 2016, it had been announced that construction had commenced on the Caroline Bay Marina with a view to having it open and operational in time for the America's Cup the following year. The marina was opened in April 2017, and its inclusion as part of the first phase of development now made the project consist of 35 branded condominium residences and a 5-star boutique 79-room Ritz Reserve hotel. Mr. Speaker, what the people of Bermuda did not know was that even before the marina had opened, the Caroline Bay project was experiencing difficulty. This had to be known to the then cabinet and the developers who persisted in providing public updates on the project, which were inaccurate. In fact, in January 2018, one of the developers told the Ritz-Carlton newsroom, and I quote, "Caroline Bay's construction progress is well on its way, and not only is the first phase of the Ritz-Carlton Reserve residences at the Cove projected to be delivered on time, but the development of the resort community has brought great prosperity to our island, end quote. Mr. Speaker, 1 month later, in February 2018, after only 7 months in office, the developers asked to meet with the then Premier and Minister of Finance to advise that there were significant financing issues and that in all likelihood, work would slow down and eventually cease without an injection of further capital. Since that time, Mr. Speaker, this government has worked with the developers and has attempted to support all reasonable efforts to secure financing. The Premier has made himself available to meet with several prospective financiers and on every occasion has supported the project and the efforts to secure much-needed financing to complete at least Phase 1. Mr. Speaker, I've spent considerable time rehearsing the history of this project to provide necessary context around where things stand today. The financial viability of this project has been in question for at least the last 6 years, and it is important to note that much of the lending in support of the development has not been the ringing endorsement of its economics, some might claim, but is founded, unfortunately, in a Government of Bermuda guarantee to the tune of $165 million. Mr. Speaker, honorable members and the public may know that for 15 years of my professional career, I have structured, managed, and led the execution of equity and debt financing transactions. My experience is being usefully employed as I seek to robustly defend the public purse from calls on the guarantee which may or may not come as a result of our obligations in the event of defaults by the developer. Honorable members in the public may have heard the announcement that Caroline Bay had secured financing. Whilst it is not for me to comment in this forum on the details of any financing arrangement, I wish to make it clear that any such offer is subject to the financing arrangements complying with Bermuda's regulatory requirements and the approval of the Government of Bermuda, who, through the terms of the guarantee, is a full partner at the table in matters relating to the financing of this development. I have taken the time to advise colleagues and will summarize now that a term sheet or draft terms of agreement do not represent irrevocable financing and should not be termed as such. Mr. Speaker, recent reports regarding inactivity on the site and the failure to pay contractors and subcontractors are disturbing. At a minimum, these businesses should be paid for the work they have done, and it is important to note that the payment of their bills is in no way the responsibility of this government. Mr. Speaker, the land at Morgan's Point continues to represent an important opportunity for Bermuda to renew its claim to being a luxury destination. The economics of the development must be recast and devised with a realistic view of the world economy and the value proposition we need to present in order to be successful in tourism, business, and economic diversification. This opportunity is too important to squander. We do not do justice to the people of Bermuda by continuing to shore up a vision that no longer matches reality and which cannot be sustained on any applicable merits. It is well past time to approach this development differently. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to advancing projects that support the government's core aims and objectives that include investment opportunities for Bermudians, employment for workers, growth for small and medium-sized businesses, and an increase in economic activity arising out of a sensible, fair immigration policy. Where these ideals are embraced by developers, existing or prospective, we are open to working with them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.
Reports of committees.
There are none.
Premier's questions.
Members, and particularly for the listening audience, just a quick brief. The Premier's question, as you know, the opposition leader is allowed 3 questions. All other members are allowed 1 question, and only members asking the question may submit a supplementary, which are 2 supplementaries. And this morning, the courtesy is always given to the opposition leader to start first. Opposition leader, would you like to present your questions?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to Bermuda and colleagues. Premier, just one of the topical things that we continue to hear, and probably yourself as well, out into the public and on the internet, is that we seemingly having a problem with the growing numbers of Bermudans emigrating. Does the Premier, and is he aware that this is becoming more prevalent in Bermuda, that Bermudians are leaving the island?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Opposition Leader for his question. What I would state is that empirical evidence is not currently being collected. It's one of the things that were inside of our platform points, and it's something that I know the Department of Statistics is grappling with on the best way to collect these statistics. What I can say is that anytime anyone who decides to leave Bermuda and to live somewhere else is certainly a sad time. But the facts are that we have to remember, Mr. Speaker, that this is an economy that needs restructuring. This is a country that needs restructuring, and there are some persons that cannot afford to live inside of Bermuda, and it is important. People move away for many different opportunities, Mr. Speaker. People move away for educational opportunities. That's the reason why it's important to make sure our public education system is correct. But people also move away for opportunities for jobs that do not exist here and as part of their interests. So the thing is, Mr. Speaker, that it is a wide-ranging problem, but the best way to arrest that and also to make sure that individuals come back, in our view, is to execute our election manifesto and the pledges of which we set out in our election manifesto, which we're on the way to doing, Mr. Speaker.
It's a supplementary or a new question?
Supplementary.
Continue.
Yeah, considering that the Premier has mentioned that it is difficult for Bermudians to afford to live here, and so some of that is part of the reason why. Would he believe that that probably is the major reason why? We've always had people who emigrate for other reasons, whether they're going to other jobs or better opportunities for their careers and the likes. But what we are talking about are many of the people that we have identified are not going because they are seeking out to improve their career. It is because they can't afford Bermuda. So the question is, does he believe that they are leaving for economic reasons as a prevalence?
Thank you. Mr. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that economic reasons are the main reasons why people leave Bermuda. The main reasons why people leave Bermuda, the ones in which I've spoken to, revolve around education and also revolve around issues inside of our community that around violence and gang violence. And so what I would say is that I do not accept the opposition leader's statement that the prevalent reason for that is. The other reason is that we have to understand, and this is one of the reasons why inside of our election manifesto that we are committed to reviewing foreclosure rules. There are persons who will get in a place where they have lost their job, lose their house, and decide, as opposed to sticking around, to leave the keys to the lawyer and get on a British Airways flight.
Second supplementary or new question?
Second supplementary.
Continue.
In consideration of what the Premier is saying, and he has also mentioned that they are looking at how they deal with the situation as far as quantifying the numbers. Can he give us an idea of what they have established thus far? I mean, this is not a new problem. Government's been here for 2 years now. What has been established thus far to try and get a better hold of those numbers of those who are emigrating?
Thank you. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I cannot speak specifically to what has been done in the Department of Statistics on this particular matter, but I'm happy to speak to the Minister as responsibility and attempt to get him to speak to the opposition leader to certainly fill him in. What I can say, Mr. Speaker, is what is more important. The one thing is to count, the other thing is to understand the reasons why and to address the reasons why. And in addressing the reasons why, Mr. Speaker, I will go again. It is executing on the election pledges that were made by this government, Mr. Speaker, dealing with the issues of gang violence, dealing with the issues of education, and dealing with the issues of economic opportunity inside of this country, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Premier? Opposition Leader, would you like to put your second question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second question. Is the Premier considering a change to the rescheduling of the number of times Parliament sits in session during doing the people's business? Let me just restate that. Is the Premier considering the comments that he made Can I say my question, please, Mr. Speaker?
Members, we'd like to be able to hear what the member on his feet.
Is the Premier considering a change to the scheduling of and number of times Parliament sits in session doing the people's business, as opposed to his statement in the Royal Gazette that there are many other jurisdictions who have shorter sessions and the likes?
Thank you. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, the short answer to the question is that, as is the purview of the government in directing government business, the House of Assembly will sit in regular session. What I can say is, Mr. Speaker, the short answer to his question is no. But the longer answer to his question, Mr. Speaker, is that this House of Assembly, in the 2 years of which we have been in office, has met more often than the first 2 years that the House of Assembly met when that government was in session, Mr. Speaker. The fact of the matter is that we met in April, we met in September, we came back in early, and we may be come back again, Mr. Speaker. We are doing the people's business, but if the opposition leader is, as I say, so upset that we only met twice in June, I will let the opposition leader know that we're expecting to meet every
Point of order, Mr.
day in
Speaker.
July.
Point of order?
I've never said such a thing, that I was upset with the number of times that we're sitting at all. In fact, he in the paper made the presumption that I would agree with him, but I haven't made any objections to the times that we've met. I just want to know, is he considering something else?
Okay, thank you. Now, would you like to put a supplementary to your second question, or would you like to do a third question?
Yes, certainly, a supplementary to what he has answered. If, in fact, then, that during his answer he has said that they have met more times than we as a government had met in their parliamentary session, does he feel that the number of times that we have set has offset to be effective in the charge that they have to lower the cost of living? We've met many times, but it has not led to the lower cost of living. It has not led to the lower cost of land tax. It has led to increased costs to Bermuda.
Okay.
So has the number of times that we have said led to a better Bermuda and the cost of living?
Thank you. Premier?
Higher cost of living.
Mr. Speaker, the Progressive Labour Party is focused on executing its agenda, and if we will look at the inflation figures versus the time that they were in office and the time that we were in office, Mr. Speaker, you'll recognize that inflation is lower under us than it was under them, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Second supplementary, new question.
Third question.
Okay, third question.
Third question.
Yeah, put your question. Put
If
your
we're going to start
question.
interpolation,
Put your question. Just speak to
spending
me.
complete with cost of living. Third question. With the proliferation, we continue to see within the newspaper, front page actually, over and over and over. Yes, with the proliferation of rats on the island in Bermuda, would the Premier consider that, and does he consider the proliferation of rats in Bermuda a challenge or an island-wide problem?
Premier?
Could I possibly ask the honourable member to repeat his question in full? Just want to make sure I'm answering correctly.
Yeah. Does
Yeah,
the
repeat
Premier
the question.
consider the proliferation of rats in Bermuda an island-wide problem?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not entirely certain that I'm going to say that I consider it an island-wide problem. What I can say is that there are a number of factors. This is something which was addressed in a cabinet meeting because there was a question as to number. Now, there is the anecdotal thought that it is due to the frequency in trash collection, but there's other factors that apply insofar as the increased food sources for these persons, which is not there, but just in vegetation, and this is due to the reduction of, was it pesticides? And the reason when they're, seriously, it was this whole thing that came. I see that honorable members opposite are looking shocked and surprised because of the elimination of Roundup, was it? And the banning of Roundup, that means there's actually more vegetation that rats are feeding on, and these are some of the factors that are So here we go, Mr. Speaker.
Speak to the chair.
So here we
Speak to
go,
the
Mr.
chair.
Speaker.
I'm listening.
Here we go. So here's what I'm going to say, Mr. Speaker.
Address
Here's
the
what
chair.
I'm going to do. I am going, Mr. Speaker, to asked the minister who has responsibility for environment and health to table the report of which they got from the technical officers so the honorable member's office can read it. Because if I'm going to stand here at a dispatch box and answer questions from the opposition, stating the facts of which I know, based upon the information which has been given to me, and they are going to pretend as though if I'm making it up, then I'm just going to give them the evidence from the ministers, from the scientific persons, and we don't need to do this. However, allow me to say this, Mr. Speaker. The Department of Environmental Health certainly is always available. In addition to that, the Ministry of Public Works has additional wheelie bins which have been ordered, which they are giving to certain communities to help to address those problems, and we will continue to work in addressing the issue.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. Like,
Yes.
actually, and I appreciated the honorable minister gave an extensive view on what he felt about the rats, as the premier is referring to. Notwithstanding that, the sources of food for rats has grown. We understand that. What I am trying to understand with my supplementary is exactly what is the plan, because we do know we have a proliferation of rats. It is not just coming from any particular neighborhood. It is coming from the public saying this here island-wide. So has the premier discussed with the minister and the department an extensive plan on how to address the real issue? He said there was a plan per se, but...
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can say a couple of things. The first thing that I can say is that there was a public campaign that was done on the need for certain issues in dealing with this particular challenge, and we asked members of the community to remind that the Department of Vector Control, if people feel that they have an issue in their area, they can call Vector Control. Vector Control will come to their house. Vector Control will set traps. They will put you on a list where they come back every 2 weeks, and I'm happy to have that campaign, which was done last year, repeated again for members of the opposition and also members of the public.
Thank you. Second supplementary?
Yeah, second supplementary. Yes, bearing that in mind, we're also aware that the vector control for some time was out of stock when people were calling. Out of stock of whatever the products were they were using to ward off rats. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was well publicized. Bait. Was it the bait? Bait. So the question I do have for the premier is, does he consider as part of the solution going back to twice-a-week trash pickup?
Premier?
For the summer period.
Premier?
I'm thankful that the honorable minister, the honorable opposition leader, who was minister at the time, spoke about the shortage. The Minister of Health has informed me that the shortage was when we came into office in 2017, most likely from the issues of which were depleted then. However, allow me to say, Mr. Speaker, at that time, we focused on schools and gardens because gardens is the most important source of food when it comes for rats. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that since we have come into office and rectified that shortage, there has not been a shortage, as the Minister of Health is indicating to me. And what I would remind persons is that they can go ahead and call the Department of Vector Control. But here we go again, Mr. Speaker. So let's be clear. We have come into office and we have ordered a number of garbage trucks. There are garbage trucks which were ordered because of the plain and simple fact that, well, under their leadership, there was probably no garbage trucks ordered. The Minister of Public Works isn't here, so I cannot clarify. Mr. Speaker, the garbage fleet, just like the bus fleet, didn't get into this problem overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight either. But we're going to continue to get back to the place where we can keep our fleets up and continue to add to it. And we are not, Mr. Speaker, going to add twice-a-week trash collection until we have a place where we can deliver it on a regular basis. We know the challenges of which existed when collection did not happen on schedule because buses broke down, additional overtime, etc. We are doing it to manage, and we are continuing to invest in getting the fleets back to where it was, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. That brings us to the completion of the opposition leader's 3 questions. We now move on to other members who have indicated they have questions for the Premier, and the next is the opposition whip. Member, would you like to put your question?
Good morning. My question is around the recent public display of demonstration, in particular at Gorham's. So I would like to know, Mr. Premier, whether the recent insurance block grant that has been legislated has had an impact on not only the likes of employers such as Gorham's, but also Matilda Smith and also Summerhaven.
Premier? Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not entirely certain what question the honourable member has asked me to answer. I know that I'm here to answer questions on a question of government policy, so if she wants to rephrase the question on a matter of actual government policy, I'm going to do my best to try to answer it.
Member, would you like to restate your question?
Did the recent government policy around the block grant of insurance payments to the Bermuda Hospital Board have an impact on the employers such as Gorham's, Matilda Smith, Summerhaven, who are experiencing difficulties with the health insurance because and since the block grant and the premiums?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if she wants me to answer for private businesses. Here's what I can say, though, Mr. Speaker. What I can say is that I happened to read news reports yesterday, and I happened to read news reports of individuals in business and the persons who were at Gorham's who indicated their displeasure at the situation, stating that Gorham's was making money hand over fist. And far be it from me, Mr. Speaker, to comment on a private business, but the honourable member earlier today, the opposition leader, was speaking about cost of living and price in this country, and I happen to think that there are certain companies that are doing reasonably well inside of this economy.
Thank you. Supplementary? No supplementary? The next member who's indicated to have a question for Mr. Premier is the member from constituency 10. Honourable member, would you like to put your question at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you and colleagues in the listening audience, to the Honourable Premier. Honourable Premier, in 2018, the government gave a $75,000 payment to Somerset Cricket Club 2 days before Cup Match to support Cup Match. In 2019, will St. George's be receiving a payment to support Cup Match?
Let the Premier, the question was to the Premier. Member, to the Premier. Premier, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, it is clearly the month of July. As I am adorned in my red and blue tie and my red and blue socks, I'm going to just make it clear, Mr. Speaker. Pardon me? Oh, don't feel sorry for me. It's okay. What I can tell the honourable member is that, yes, the government will be supporting the Somerset,
Yes.
It's so hard to say sometimes. I know. We will be supporting the St. George's Cricket Club, and it was budgeted inside the budget to support them in the exact amount of $75,000 as was given to Somerset Cricket Club last year.
Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like it noted that I object to the support for St. George's this year, Mr. Speaker. But in light of the fact that the Premier is trying to be unbiased in his approach, I ask the Honourable Premier, does he believe this money will be put to good use and they will be able to attract a team to get on the field for the 2 days?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Point of order.
No point of order allowed in this session.
The members imputed improper motives on St. George's.
No point of order. No point of order. The next member who has a question for you.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable former Premier for his question. It is my very expectation that the St. George's Cricket Club will put the money to good use. What is important, Mr. Speaker, is to recognize that we are going to do our work and our effort to support our community clubs. Right at this very moment, the Minister of Public Works is meeting with representatives from the Western Stars Football Club in an exact measure to have a public-private partnership between government and the private sector to enable them to redevelop their facilities. Those are conversations which we're having throughout the island, and I'm certain that St. George's will put it to good use, as will other clubs who are getting assistance from government for their infrastructure put into good use. However, in response to the Honorable former Premier's question, I'm not entirely certain that it's going to help the team.
Thank you, member. The next question, Premier, is from the member from constituency 31. Honourable member, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Bermuda. Last week, the member from constituency 16, MP Michael Weeks, spoke regarding the Gay Pride Parade scheduled for August 31st. He seemed to suggest that the permission to hold the parade be denied. Does the Honourable Premier agree with this sentiment?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that we have any role in approving or disapproving a parade that's going to take place. This parade is scheduled for August 31st, and I think it's going to take place.
Thank you. Supplementary? Would you like your supplementary? Member, would you like to use your supplementary?
Yes, just following on from that, I'm asking for whether he agrees with the position that was presented by the member last week, MP Weeks.
Premier?
I'm uncertain what he's asking, Mr. Speaker, if I agree with the position, as I was not in the House last week. But allow me to say this, Mr. Speaker. On August 31st, the members of this community in Bermuda are holding a parade. The parade will happen.
Second supplementary? Yeah.
Second supplementary. Does the Honourable Premier intend to attend the parade?
Premier?
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, my wife and children will be, like many other Bermudians, in Florida during that week.
Thank you. The next member who has questions for you, Premier, is the member from constituency 19. Member, would you like to put your question now? Member, speak to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and of course, you're the only one that needs to know about
Thank you.
my attendance. Thank you. Right, that's true. That is true. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Premier, if you could tell me, what is the status of the plans to make health care more affordable to Bermuda?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy that the Honourable former opposition leader asked that particular question. It is something that the government has been engaged on. The Minister of Health has been in intensive consultation with many sectors of the community as we formulate and to deliver on one of the government's signature election promises. And it is my expectation that the Minister of Health will be making an announcement on that next month. Correct, Minister? Next month.
Thank you. Supplementary?
The supplementary is, as part of the information that was put out, there was a suggestion that there's going to be a schedule of twice-a-year report. Could the minister twice-a-year report on the progress of your plan? It's in the information that you put out. I read this, and I just wondered whether has a schedule been set up in terms of reporting the progress on the plan?
Thank you. Minister, Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I can help to refresh the honourable member's memory that I would say during the budget session that the Honourable Minister of Health made a statement on health care financial reform, and we're going there. It's been not half a year since then, but it'll be half a year in August, and it'll be in perfect time for that announcement, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Second supplementary?
Second supplementary, and I just wondered if the Premier can confirm that the report will be on the web page, which was what was indicated, so that not just people in the House will get to know about this, but anybody could go and find it.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I've heard from the Honourable Minister of Health that the announcement will be a public announcement. It won't necessarily be an announcement here, as I can assure the Honourable Opposition Leader, who's worried how frequent we sit. We will not be sitting here in August, but we will have the announcement that will be done in August, Mr. Speaker. And the Minister of Health will not only make that announcement publicly, but she'll be doing the full media rounds, complete with education campaigns, so people can understand precisely what it is that the government is proposing.
Thank you. That now brings us on to the next member who has questions for you, Premier, and that's from the member from constituency 22. Honourable member, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Premier, my question relates to the allegations of abuse and neglect of Bermudian children at the Department of Child and Family Services and the report produced by the Department of Internal Affairs, which report, per previous discussions, has not been made public. Will the Premier, internal audit, thank you, will the Premier please tell the House who took the decision to use the Department of Internal Audit to investigate the allegations?
Mr. Speaker, I would only assume that it will be either the Secretary to the Cabinet or the head of the Public Service. That would be my assumption. It's not something that is an operational decision, or sorry, it's not something that is a political decision that comes to ministers. That's my assumption, but I can clarify for the honourable member if he wishes.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary. Given the answer just given by the Honourable Premier, is the House to conclude that you had no involvement in the decision that the Department of Internal Audit would carry out the investigation?
Premier?
Given that it falls under your remit.
Not to my recollection, and the Department of Internal Audit does not fall under the remit of the Premier. It is a reporting line. We are the minister that is administratively responsible, but I think the Department of Internal Audit has clear reporting lines to the Cabinet Secretary underneath the Act, if I'm aware, with my recollection. That's my best recollection at this time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Second supplementary?
So, sorry, was that a no? You had no involvement in the decision?
Are you going to do a second supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe the Premier answered my question whether he had any involvement. I didn't hear him say no.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I refer the honourable member to the answer I gave moments ago.
Thank you. And the last member who has an indication from the opposition is the member from constituency number 8. Honourable member?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My understanding that the FinTech Fund may have raised some community capital. And so my question is this: how much has the FinTech industry made and contributed to the community fund that the Premier once said would be in place?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I do believe that the honourable member is referring to the FinTech Development Fund. Of course, I smile because this is the favorite staple question for the members of the opposition, and it is okay. I will give the answer exactly as I gave it in May and exactly as I gave it in March, that to date there have been no donations to the FinTech Development Fund, and the minute that there is a donation, members of this House will be the first to know.
Thank you. Supplementary? Okay. The next member who has a question for you is a member from constituency 26. Honourable member, would you like to put your question now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, whilst on the doorsteps, a number of my constituents have complained about the Department of Planning and the time that it takes to get work approved. As I know the Premier has committed to making the government more efficient, can you share what is being done to improve the situation?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, planning is something that is certainly a challenge. And I say it's a challenge, but I know that we are certainly making progress in this matter. I think the Minister of Home Affairs made a statement to the House in March, speaking about the items that are going to streamline the planning process, such as things which are going to be able to go to the director directly and not the board, new streamlined procedures for emergency application. The Department of Planning will be holding planning clinics throughout the island to provide guidance to the general public, and there's going to be new measures to streamline the revisions process to allow certain minor changes to be implemented in the field.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Premier for that information. However, can I ask, can you tell my constituents, when can I tell my constituents to look forward to the implementation of these changes?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can tell the honourable member that if he's going to be canvassing in August, he'll be able to tell his people that in August those changes will be implemented.
Thank you. The second member has a question for you. I don't see in their seat. The next member on the list is the member from constituency 11. I see you already standing. Would you like to put your question?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
You don't have much time left. You need to put your question.
Mr. Speaker, the government should be commended for putting Wi-Fi in schools because certain other people didn't. But, Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
the teachers in my constituency, because Cousin Evan and I, we canvass, Elliott, Whitney, and another school, have complained about the internet speeds. My question to the Premier is,
I think you're going to lose out.
what can be done to improve the
Thank you
internet
for your
speeds?
question period. Thank you for your question. We now move on to the remainder of the question period, and we have questions down this morning as written questions, and actually we have 5 written questions this morning that require a response. The first written question is to the Premier, and Premier, would you like to respond to the first written question from the honourable member, from the honourable opposition leader? It's an oral response that normally accompanies with a written response, but you can do your oral on your feet. Yeah.
That's what Sadie
Mr. Opposition Leader, would you like to put the question to you?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honourable Premier please inform this Honourable House of the names of all the members of legislature from July 2017 until present who have been paid to serve on any government committee, board, or quango, and the remuneration paid for that services?
Thank you, Premier. It's an oral response.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. H.K.E. Swan, $750. Mrs. Renee Ming, $7,500. Mrs. Nandi Outerbridge, JP, $200. Mrs. Tanae Ferbert, JP MP, $150. Mr. Christopher Famous, JP MP, $1,600. The Honorable Michael J. Scott, JP MP, $31,300. Senator Jason Hayward, JP, $100. Mr. Neville Tyrrell, JP MP, $3,050. Mr. Lawrence Scott, JP MP, $18,125. Honorable Michael Weeks, JP MP, $6,450. Mr. Scott Simmons, JP, $4,800. Mr. Dennis Lister III, JP MP, $1,300. Ms. Suzanne Holzhauser, JP, $600. And Mr. Rolf Commission, JP MP, $22,476. Honorable Wayne Ferbert, JP-MP, as previously reported in the public domain, and Senator James Jardine, JP, as previously reported in the public domain.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Premier, for that answer. Can the Premier tell us, in conjunction with those, I'm sure he has the information, those names, what those committees were with each name?
Premier?
Absolutely, I may. I was trying to save time as there's a number of questions, but I'll go through. Honorable H.K.E. Swan, JP-MP, Cedar Bridge Board of Governors, $50. Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board, $700. Renee Ming, Cedar Bridge Board of Governors, $300. Immigration Board, $7,200. Nandi Outerbridge, Cedar Bridge Board of Governors, $200. Tanae Ferber, Board of Education, $150. Christopher Famous, Bermuda College Board of Governors, $0. Broadcast Commission, $300. Liquor License Commission, $1,300. Honorable Michael Scott, Broadcast Commission, $700. Bermuda Shipping and Maritime Authority, $30,000. Telecommunications Board, $600. Jason Hayward, National Trading Board, $100. Neville Tyrrell, National Sports Center Board of Trustees, $550. BLDC, $2,500. MP Lawrence Scott, $17,475. Bermuda Airport Authority, $650 for Bermuda Housing Corporation. Michael Weeks, Bermuda Shipping and Maritime Authority, $6,000. Water Safety Council, $400. Bermuda Housing Corporation, $50. Mr. Scott Simmons, JP, Water Safety Council, $400. Trucks Advisory Committee, $50. Ports Authority, $250. Treatment Offenders Board, $4,000. Bermuda Housing Corporation, $100. Dennis Lister, Road Safety Council, $1,300. Suzanne Roberts Holzhauser, Bermuda Land Development Corporation, $600. And MP Rolf Commission, Parole Board, $22,476.47.
Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Considering the list of names that the Honorable Premier has given, I'm assuming that they've already been paid. So my question is then, are there any MPs who have taken on any committees, boards, or involved in any quangos who have, as of today, not yet been paid? And the amount?
That is not information I have at my fingertips, but I'm happy to try to get it back to the minister. I'm just looking at this came from the Accountant General. So they gave us the printout and we went to the various quangos to get it right.
Thank you. That moves us on to the next written question. The second written question this morning is it's actually a written question, but it doesn't require oral response. It's a written question to the Minister Wilson from the Honorable Gordon Pentland, who have
Dickinson's.
Beg pardon?
Dickinson.
Oh, actually missed one. Minister of Finance, I missed your question. I was moving on. Minister of Finance, you actually have a question from the Honorable Member from Constituency 10. Honorable Member, would you like to put your question to? And this requires all response for all three questions in this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Minister, will the Honourable Minister please provide to this Honourable House an update on the progress of hiring an Executive Director for the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission? And please provide details of the recruitment process and submit us a statement to the House on March 1st, 2019, including the dates and contents of any advertising, the number of applicants, and if an applicant has been selected for the position.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I can advise that the Commission continues with its recruitment process for an Executive Director. A potential candidate has been identified, and they are at the early stages of discussions as to suitability for the role.
Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the statement that I referred to in the question, the Honourable Minister mentioned that a executive recruiter was going to be hired. Can the Honourable Minister please provide the costs to date of hiring the executive recruiter and the name of the company or the person used?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not advised that the Commission is actually using an executive recruiter. They have identified a candidate on their own and are engaging in conversations on their own.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then...
Supplementary.
Supplementary, yes. Yeah. So I'm just following the Minister's statement where he did commit to this House that an executive recruiter would be used. If they've changed the course and the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission has identified a candidate on their own, through what channels and what sources did they identify that candidate?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I would need us to seek clarity from the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission on that process with respect to them identifying a candidate on their own. I don't have the benefit of my statement that I made earlier that the member is referring to, but I think I mentioned...
That phone needs to be off.
I believe I mentioned that an executive recruitment firm was among the options that would be considered. Whether or not they've used them would be a call that they would need to make on their own.
Mr. Speaker, just for clarification, the Honourable Minister said in his statement it has been decided to engage the services of an executive recruiter.
As the member will appreciate, my statement was largely prepared for me by the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission, indicating what their plan was at the time. They have subsequently not used an executive recruitment firm, as I'm advised. I will check back with them with respect to the individuals that they've identified and how they went about finding that person.
Thank you. Select supplementary? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My supplementary relates to the other part of the question, the dates and contents of any advertising and the number of applicants, if an applicant has been selected.
Minister?
The responses prepared for me for these questions did not include any detail on advertisements that have been made, and so my assumption is that there weren't any. The question was very clear, and so inasmuch as there was no response to it, my reading is that there weren't any advertisements made.
Second supplementary. Just for clarification, are we saying that the recruitment process is still going, that an applicant has not been selected?
My statement, my response that a potential candidate has been identified, and the Commission is in the early stages of discussions as to suitability for the role.
I believe I have one supplementary left. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in regard to that, if the candidate has been identified, is the minister able to give a loose time frame of when the individual might start, and if there is funding available to pay the person?
I have no information on when the candidate would start, inasmuch as they are selected. Inasmuch as there is an executive director candidate hired, the position will be funded.
Thank you to the minister. I look forward to the feedback on the questions not answered. Question number 2. Will the honorable minister please provide to this honorable House details of the cost to run the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission on a monthly basis from April 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, breaking down the total cost of each month in the following areas: salaries and wages, consultants' fees, administrative costs, rent, and general overhead and other expenses. Thank you.
The cost to run the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission on a monthly basis from April 1, 2018 through to June 30th, 2019, breaking down the costs for each month into the following areas: salaries and wages, consultant fees, administrative costs, rent, and general overhead and other expenses will be provided in the following summary. For the 15-month period, total wages and salaries were $1,373,413. Total consultants and service provider fees were $336,572. Total administrative costs were $426,158. Total rent, $167,171. Total general overhead, $88,552. Other expenses, $121,320. So the total cost for running the BCGC for 15 months was $2,513,185, or an average cost of $167,545 per month. With respect to the monthly detail, with respect to salaries, in April 2018, $116,121. In May, $95,609. In June of 18, $92,044. July, $93,450. August, $94,916. September, $96,120. October, $97,476. November, $91,033. December, $89,666. January, that'll be January of 2019, $91,243. February, $87,769. March, $110,162. April, $88,406. May, $66,029. June, $62,572. For consultants and service providers, starting in April of 2018, $8,776. May, $22,014. June, $20,059. July, $18,869. August, $24,615. September, $12,584. October, $11,870. November, $24,769. December, $19,890. January of 2019, $14,161. February, $44,465. March, $38,554. April, $45,171. May, 1,588. June, 29,225. Administrative costs, starting in April 18, 34,979. May, it's 50,827. June, 21,350. July, 16,624. August, 29,523. September, 18,371. October, 45,258. November, 19,627. December, 22,177. January of 2019, 32,155. February, 20,998. March, 45,619. April, 17,432. May, 26,761. And June, 24,335. For rent, from April of 2018 through to January of 2019, it was amount of $12,142 per month. In February of 2019, $7,629. March, $11,742. April, $8,793. And the April number is the same for May and for June. For general overhead, April of 18, 5,112. May, 3,174. June, 4,447. July, 3,393. August, 7,706. September, 11,074. October, 4,224. November, 4,918. December, 3,689. January, 3,620. February, 3,360. March, 8,234. April, 12,832. May, 6,804. And June, 5,363. Other expenses, starting in April of 18, 7,336. May, 7,586. June, 7,147. July, 6,927. August, 6,968. September, 7,154. October, 6,901. November, 12,353. December, 9,554. January, 19, 7,307. February, 20,686. March, 1,956. April, 8,078. May, 8,447. And June, 3,019. It should be noted that the average monthly cost to run the BCGC, I think I mentioned earlier, was $167,545 as compared to $199,784 on a monthly basis for the fiscal year ended March 31, 2018.
Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, I notice in the breakdown of the salaries and wages that it's fairly consistent after a drop-off in April of 2018 of $90,000 a month, but then it ramps up to $110,000 and drops to $88,000 in April, but then it is the monthly salary bill is $66,000 and $62,000 in May and June of 2019. Can the Honourable Minister shed some light on that? And in addition, the consultants have been fairly consistent at less than $25,000 a month, but in February and March and April, it jumps up to $44,000, $38,000, and $45,000. Can the Honourable Minister please provide some background on that?
Minister? You're going to have to ask a minute to sit,
Mr.
and you want
Speaker.
to run his errands now.
Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that in April of 2018, the Chief Technology Officer was made redundant. There was a redundancy payment to the Chief Technology Officer. And in March of 2019, the Office Manager for the BCGC was made redundant. And so that number can include some redundancy payments to the individuals who had left the organization. With respect to the consulting expense for February, March, and April of 2019, there was a payment of $25,000 a month over the course of those 3 months to a consultant who assisted the agency with correspondent banking issues.
Supplementary?
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
yes. In regards to that $25,000 per month payment, can the Honorable Minister name the consultant and what have been the results of the work done by the consultant in regard to correspondent banking?
The consultant is Rose Investments, and the work is ongoing.
Third supplementary?
Third supplementary.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, obviously, if the work's ongoing, the consultant's not being paid. What are the current priorities and results of the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission?
Minister?
The priorities are to get the legislation passed within the House in terms of the regulations and the law. It's one priority. 2 is getting an executive director in place to run the organization. And 3, it's resolving the long-standing issue of getting banks to accept gaming proceeds. Those works are all continuing.
Is there a question? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The third question. Will the Honorable Minister please provide to this Honorable House details of the staff and consultants as of June 30th, 2019 at the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission and the remuneration including all benefits to each person?
Minister?
Details of the staff and consultants as of June 30th, 2019 at the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission and the remuneration including benefits for each person are as follows. The total monthly payroll was $55,619,000 for the month. This is a reduction from the $82,953,000 that was paid in June of 2018. Total employee benefits, which include health insurance, pension, and social insurance contributions, were $6,952. Currently, there are 6 full-time employees. The Chief Financial Officer, who also acts as the Executive Director. Benefits paid are between $13,900 and $18,000, which includes acting pay. No bonuses are paid to this position. Next is the Director of Public Problem and Responsibility Gaming. Benefits paid are between $9,000 and $12,000 per month. No bonuses are paid for this position. It's a legal analyst who earns between $9,000 and $12,000 a month. No bonuses are paid for this position. There's a business analyst who earns between $6,000 and $9,000 a month. And there are 2 administrators who earn between $45,000 and $6,000 each month. With respect to consultants, there's Felicia Daniels, who acts as a policy analyst, who deals with AML and NAMLAC issues, which are a priority for the country. This consultant was paid $48,488 for the 15-month period from April 1, 2018 to date. Princeton Global Solutions, who provide technical gaming advice and consultation, were paid $60,490 for the 15-month period from April 1, 2018 to date. Estrella Accounting Services, who provide bookkeeping and accounting services to ensure proper segmentation of duties for the recording of financial transactions, This provider was paid $29,798 for the 15 months period commencing April 1, 2018 to date. Decisions, who provide basic IT maintenance services, were paid $42,015 for the 15-month period. Lowell Technologies, who provide website development and maintenance solutions, have been paid $17,626 for the 15-month period from April 1, 2018 to date. Rhodes Investments have been paid to work with the BCBG to deliver a correspondent banking solution, have been paid $116,250 from October 1, 2018 to date. Dr. Lori Rugel, who is a problem and responsibility gaming consultant and an international expert who trains Bermudian clinicians, was paid $21,959 for the 15-month period, April 1 to date. The financial information for the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission from inception, that'll be September of 2015 to March 2019, those 19 months have been tabled. The total cost was $2,720,000 and $2,720,099, which works out to be about $143,000 per month. This cost is lower now as the General Counsel would have taken time to ramp up. The Gaming Commission would have taken time to ramp up their operations. The total cost for the year ended March 2018 was $2,478,098, which works out to approximately $206,500 per month. The Gaming Commission is unable to provide monthly totals as they advise. They have changed bookkeepers and do not have information for the years that have been audited. So those are the numbers, sorry.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honourable Minister for that. The Honourable Minister said on the floor of this House that the budget for 2019-2020 would be $500K, and it would be done through a grant and potential loan from local institutions. The Honourable Minister, can he give an update on the budget for 2019-2020 and if money has to be borrowed from local institutions?
Thank you. Minister?
I don't have the budget in front of me at the moment. What I have instructed the Gaming Commission to do is to avail themselves to the line provided by local financial institution.
Second supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, has any money been received into the Bermuda Casino Gaming Commission in the last 2 years in regards to applications or fees for processes along the Gaming Commission to the final end of somebody getting a casino license?
Minister?
The payment of licensing fees has been deferred by the folks who have provisional licenses.
And that moves us on to the...
I think I have one more supplementary. Adam both?
Yep. Moves you on to your... that's all three of your questions done. That now moves us on to the third written question this morning, and that was to the Minister of Health from the Member Gordon Pantolin. The written questions were supplied? Written answers?
Yes, that's correct, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you. We'll now move on to question number 4, and it's a question to the Minister of National Security from the Deputy Speaker, who is traveling on behalf of the CPA and has asked that the MP Michael Scott put his questions. MP Scott, would you like to put the question?
I would, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, will the Honourable Minister please inform this Honourable House what is the total cost of the ongoing investigation, both overseas and locally, into a former Premier of Bermuda as at June 30th, 2019, in the following areas: the total man-hours and cost in Bermuda and overseas, the total travel cost for airline and ground transportation, and the total cost for accommodation in Bermuda and overseas.
Mr. Speaker, and this Honourable House, the funds for the total man-hours and cost in Bermuda and overseas for the police investigation are $4,688,184.10, Mr. Speaker. The total cost for airline and ground transportation is $64,345.70. Mr. Speaker, the total cost for accommodation in Bermuda and overseas is $80,000.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Question 2. I'll go to question 2.
Question 2?
If I may. Question 2. Would the Honourable Minister please inform this Honourable House what is the total cost of legal fees in Bermuda and overseas, and the names of the local and overseas law firms involved in this ongoing investigation?
Well, that brings us to a close of the question period. And we'll now move on to the next item on the order.
Mr. Speaker, just a question. The questions that are outstanding, will they be received in a written reply?
The questions that are outstanding, only if they are requested a written response.
No. The member can, Mr. Dunkley can either request that they have the questions put in writing so they can be in the Hansard, or the member, Mr. Dunkley, you can request that they can be deferred until next week.
I thank the
According
clerk
to
for that.
Standing Order
Yes.
18-7.
18.7, I'm aware of that order. I thank for the clarification. I would like to defer them to next week.
Okay, we'll have them deferred for you.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of privilege, in the light of the public interest, the extreme public interest of the answers to these questions being tendered, would you, as Speaker, consider suspending the orders for us to continue the questions and answers being presented?
No, because the standing orders provide, as was just informed by the clerk, that it will allow the opportunity for the question to be deferred for another sitting. So the members ask that they be deferred for another sitting, and at that time, the questions will be provided.
I'm in your hands, Mr. Speaker. Put the question.
Okay.
Could I'm being advised by my whip that I should ask you, Mr. Speaker, to have the questions deferred.
So you're asking that your third question be deferred?
Well, the second question to which the Minister has not.
Because the Minister answered the first question. The second question he was about to answer.
That's right.
He hasn't answered, so you want that deferred and your third question deferred until next sitting.
Oh. I understand that the Minister will not be here next week, Mr. Speaker, which is why I was asking for the suspension of the rule, so that the Minister can give the answer.
Well, the House also allows that if a minister's not present, another minister can respond on his behalf.
Right.
So if he's not going to be here next week, he can have the other minister respond on his behalf.
And if there were supplementaries, only the Minister of National Security could deal with these.
Time has run out on us. Time has run out. But the rules do allow, if time exceeds, as it has done, that it can be deferred. So the matter can be deferred until next week and answered and responded to next week. Okay? Thank you. And with the following the time that's on the clock right now, Deputy Premier, I'll suggest that you move us to lunch.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that we adjourn for lunch until 2 p.m.
Any objections? No objections. So adjourn now until 2 p.m.